Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the Monday Night Raw review. Monday Night Raw tonight was from the BOK Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Monday Night Raw tonight, absolutely horrendous show as always. It was fucking terrible. It was boring. And this show felt like it was more promos and less wrestling. Should title this show Raw is Promos. Because that's what it was. More promos, less wrestling. And nothing even happened on this show tonight. Brock Lesnar wasn't on the show. When you don't have Brock Lesnar on the show, then what's the point? At least when Brock Lesnar is on Monday Night Raw, for the 15, 20 minutes of the show, at least it's entertaining with him just there. Aside from Brock Lesnar, it's the same shit with the show. But Monday Night Raw tonight, absolutely fucking terrible. What do we get on the show tonight? We had Becky Lynch and Doudrop versus Liv Morgan and Bianca Belair. We saw Doudrop and Liv Morgan and Bianca Belair go at it last week. Only thing is Becky Lynch being in the match. We had Austin Theory versus Finn Balor. Finn Balor ended up returning. We had Kevin Owens versus Damian Priest. And in the main event, we had Bobby Lashley versus Seth Rollins. Can you tell me if that match makes any sense whatsoever? Two heels going at it. And right there, it's either going to end in a disqualification or a countout. And I'll let you all guess how that match ended. And then I'll talk about that. But before I start the review, if you guys haven't checked out my previous video that I uploaded earlier today, did a movie review of Enemy Mine, which starred Dennis Quaid and Louis Gossett Jr. Loved that film. Had a great story. Good acting from both Dennis Quaid and Louis Gossett Jr. Just the chemistry between those two characters in that film was amazing. So if you guys haven't checked my movie review of Enemy Mine, definitely check it out. Uploaded it earlier today. But anyways, let's get on with the review. Monday Night Raw opened up tonight, and already when they opened up, they already made us not want to watch the show. Because out came Becky Lynch. Becky Lynch ended up coming out, and we saw how Becky Lynch ended up helping Doudrop win the triple threat match last week, where Doudrop is now the number one contender to face Becky Lynch for the Raw Women's Championship at the Royal Rumble, and how Becky Lynch ended up slapping Doudrop after the match, and how Doudrop ended up blocking Becky's manhandle slam. We saw that from last week. And then Becky Lynch was in the ring. She ended up getting on the mic. She ended up welcoming us to the big time. Becky ended up saying that we're less than 2 weeks away from the Royal Rumble, and the Raw Women's Division has never been hotter. Raw's Women's Division has never been hotter. This division fucking sucks. What are you talking about? This division has never been hotter. Who's writing this shit? And she ended up saying that she's responsible for that. She wanted to say that the division is hot because we have stars from all the generations coming back, including Lita, the Bella Twins, and Mickie James, all hoping that they can win and then challenge her at WrestleMania. Obviously, those three women are not winning the Royal Rumble. So Becky ended up saying that WWE needs her because she makes stars. She ended up saying, look at Doudrop. So Becky Lynch ended up going on about Doudrop and how she got Doudrop the match, the Raw Women's Championship match at the Royal Rumble, because that's what she does. She makes people better and then beats them. She ended up admiring Doudrop's tenacity, but not really. And then out came Doudrop. Doudrop ended up coming out, got, this music going, which is fucking terrible. So Doudrop circled around the ring. She ended up staring Becky Lynch down. Doudrop ended up saying that Becky Lynch didn't get her anything. She got herself this match at the Royal Rumble for the Raw Women's Championship. But if it was Becky Lynch's plan to face Doudrop instead of the others, then she's made a big mistake. So Doudrop ended up warning Becky Lynch to stay out of her way. Becky ended up saying that if Doudrop follows her lead, she will get her another win this week. And then out came Bianca Belair. Bianca Belair came out, she ended up announcing that she will be in the Women's Royal Rumble. And she ended up saying that she will win again this year, just like last year, which I hope not. I don't want to see Bianca Belair win the Royal Rumble again for a second year. Give it to somebody else. And she ended up saying that she will go back to WrestleMania and just might challenge Becky Lynch or Doudrop. So then, of course, out came Liv Morgan. Liv Morgan ended up saying that she is also entering the Women's Royal Rumble, but she will be the one to win. So Liv Morgan ended up going on, and Doudrop ended up dropping a snore. She ended up snoring into the mic. She ended up saying that Bianca Belair and Liv Morgan are boring. More like this segment is boring. So Doudrop ended up calling for a referee so she can shut both Bianca and Liv Morgan up. So then we got a brawl ensue, and then Monday Night Raw went to commercial. This whole segment was fucking terrible. God awful. It's the same shit. It's very formulaic and awful. And then when Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, we had Becky Lynch and Doudrop versus Liv Morgan and Bianca Belair. This match was a waste of time. An absolute waste of time. So we had Bianca Belair end up tangling with Doudrop. She ended up doing a suplex, but it got blocked by Doudrop. Bianca Belair kept on fighting, but Doudrop ended up leveling her. Becky Lynch ended up taking herself in. Doudrop wasn't happy about that. So Becky Lynch was like, "Get out. I'll help us win." So then Becky ended up turning around. Bianca Belair delivered a drop kick to Becky. Liv Morgan ended up coming in, started unloading on Becky. She ended up leveling her with a drop kick. Liv Morgan delivered a high knee strike in the corner to Becky. She ran into a back elbow, Becky from Liv Morgan. Liv followed up with a missile drop kick from the top. So she kept control, Liv Morgan. She ended up nailing the double knees to Becky's face. She ended up going for the cover, and Doudrop ended up running in, breaking up the count. So Bianca Belair ended up attacking Doudrop, and she was going to deliver the KOD to Doudrop, but once again, she couldn't lift Doudrop up. So Doudrop ended up sending Bianca Belair into the turnbuckles. So Doudrop ended up just pounding on Bianca Belair until Liv Morgan ended up driving Doudrop over the top rope out to the floor. Becky ended up coming from behind, and she ended up rolling Liv Morgan up for a 2 count. So at the end of the match, we had Doudrop end up hitting the big splash on Liv Morgan because Doudrop ended up going for the pin on Liv Morgan, but Doudrop wasn't the legal woman in there. So she ended up going over, she ended up lifting Becky's arm, tagged herself in. Doudrop ended up hitting the splash to Liv Morgan. So she went for the cover, and there you go. Doudrop and Becky Lynch ended up winning the match. Post-match, Doudrop ended up going to the second rope. She ended up nailing a bonsai drop to Becky Lynch. And that was that. This match was a waste of fucking time. Awful. And then we had Reggie and Dana Brooke backstage with Edge and Beth Phoenix. Reggie ended up asking Edge for some pointers against Omas. Edge ended up saying that he doesn't think Reggie has a chance. I think we all know that Reggie doesn't have a chance with Omos. But Edge ended up wishing Reggie good luck. So Beth Phoenix ended up telling Dana Brooke that she's so proud of her hard work. Proud of her hard work? What does Dana Brooke do when she's in the ring? Flips and an elbow to her opponents? Give me a break. So proud of her hard work. She's saying that the fact that Dana is a champion after working hard these years. Working hard? What has she worked hard for? So Reggie ended up running off. Dana Brooke ended up chasing after him. Beth Phoenix and Edge ended up walking. And Edge ended up greeting Damian Priest. And he wants to pick Edge's brain about the Royal Rumble match. So Edge was giving Damian Priest some advice. And we had Stafford walk up, end up handing a note to Beth Phoenix. And that note was from Maurice. And Maurice ended up wanting to meet Beth Phoenix in the ring, woman to woman. So Beth ended up saying, that's suspicious. At which Edge ended up agreeing. So Edge ended up telling Beth Phoenix that he's coming with her. So Edge and Beth Phoenix ended up walking off. Kevin Owens ended up approaching Damian Priest. Kevin Owens ended up telling Damian Priest that he's looking forward to their match. So Damian Priest wasn't buying what Kevin Owens was saying about looking forward to a clean match to show off their sides. So Kevin Owens ended up saying that he has an announcement to go make. So he will see Damian Priest later. So that was that. And then Kevin Owens ended up coming out for the Kevin Owens show. So as Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, Kevin Owens was in the ring. He ended up welcoming us to the Kevin Owens show. He ended up saying that he would like to say that he's glad to be in Tulsa. But that would be a vile lie. Because Kevin Owens ended up saying that this place is bad. So Owens ended up introducing his best friend, who will become the Universal Champion after defeating the Tribal Chief, Roman Reigns, at the Royal Rumble. So Kevin Owens ended up introducing Seth Rollins. So then Seth Rollins ended up coming out, and we saw a recap of what we saw on SmackDown this past Friday, where Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns were in the ring, and then the Usos tried to attack Rollins. So we saw that. Kevin Owens ended up getting on the mic. He ended up welcoming Rollins to the KO show. And Owens ended up going on about how much he admires Rollins for his look, his suits, and also for how he went to SmackDown and confronted the Tribal Chief, Roman Reigns, this past week. And I gotta say, the suit that Rollins was wearing tonight looked pretty good. I guess whoever dresses Seth Rollins in those goofy looking suits took the night off tonight. Rollins didn't even wear the jacket. He didn't even look like Cruella de Vil tonight. So Owens ended up saying that Rollins is the guy who set the table. So Seth Rollins ended up saying that truth is, Reigns is rattled. He's a little nervous and scared. So Rollins ended up saying that he's playing chess while Reigns is playing checkers. And it will be like taking candy from a baby at the Royal Rumble if Reigns keeps it up. So Rollins then reveals that he will turn the Universal Championship back to Red if he wins it. So Owens and Rollins end up talking about the match, and then Kevin Owens end up revealing some news. Kevin Owens end up revealing that he is going to be in the Royal Rumble. So Kevin Owens ended up saying that he and Rollins get to give fans the biggest match ever for the Universal Championship. So out came Damian Priest. Damian Priest got on the mic. He ended up telling both Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins to shut up. Priest ended up saying that not one person on the planet thinks Rollins can defeat Reigns at the Royal Rumble. So Priest was trash talking from the stage, and he ended up saying that he just spoke with Adam Pearce and Sonya Deville. He ended up saying that his match with Kevin Owens starts right now. So then Monday Night Raw went to commercial. But overall, this segment was just meh, in my opinion. And then as Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, we had Damian Priest versus Kevin Owens, which this was a good matchup here. This was a very enjoyable match. So, of course, before the match started, we had a coming soon vignette for Veer Mahan. So when is he coming? It's been 3 months already that they've been airing this vignette, saying, oh, Veer Mahan is coming to Monday Night Raw. When is he coming? Can you explain that to me? When is he coming? Is he ever going to come? Is he going to come to catering? When's he coming? Three months already. We're seeing these vignettes for Veer Mahan coming. So what, is he going to come in the Royal Rumble? Is he going to have a spot in the Rumble? That's what I'm thinking. So then the match got underway with Damian Priest and Kevin Owens. Damian Priest ended up locking up with Kevin Owens. Damian Priest ended up working on Kevin Owens' arm. Owens ended up turning it around. Both of them ran the ropes. Damian Priest ended up leveling Kevin Owens with a shot, turning him inside out. Priest ended up delivering a kick from the apron to Kevin Owens. Owens then came back and ended up dropping Damian Priest over the top rope. Kevin Owens ended up grounding Damian Priest from behind. He starts chopping away at Damian Priest. So Damian Priest ended up taking Owens down. And we had Damian Priest end up leaping at Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens ended up nailing Damian Priest in the jaw with a super kick in midair. He ended up going to the apron, flew off the apron, delivered a frog splash to Damian Priest. So as Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, Damian Priest ended up taking out Kevin Owens. He ended up lifting Kevin Owens, ended up dropping him face first into the mat. Priest ended up charging with the stage dive into the corner. And Kevin Owens came back, rocked Damian Priest. But Damian Priest came back, delivered a clothesline. So Damian Priest ended up hitting the broken arrow to Kevin Owens. He ended up going for the cover. Owens kicked out at 2. Priest started beating Owens around, ended up taking him back up to the top. Kevin Owens ended up fighting back with some punches and some headbutts. Owens ended up blocking a suplex to Damian Priest. He ended up headbutting Priest down to the mat. Owens ended up following up with a senton. He ended up going for the cover, which Priest ended up kicking out at 2. Kevin Owens couldn't believe it. So Priest ended up blocking the stunner by Kevin Owens. Owens ended up blocking the reckoning, but he ended up coming back with a pop-up powerbomb. And he went for the cover. Damian Priest ended up kicking out. So at the end of the match, we had Kevin Owens end up dropping Damian Priest with a stunner. And he went for the cover. And there you go. Kevin Owens ended up winning the match. So, but overall, it was a good match. Really enjoyed it. It was a good TV match. But since Damian Priest lost this match, this is his first loss in his United States Championship reign. But this match, of course, was non-title. So this was his first loss in his United States Championship reign. He's never lost a match after winning the United States Championship. And then we saw Sarah Schreiber. Sarah Schreiber was backstage with Nikki ASH, who turned heel on Rhea Ripley last week. In my opinion, WWE made the wrong decision in turning Nikki heel when it should have been Rhea Ripley. So, Nikki is a heel, but she's standing there smiling. She's like, yeah, she was smiling. She's supposed to be a heel, and she's smiling. So Nikki ended up saying that she stands on her own now and feels great about the future and how everything went down. She ended up blaming Rhea Ripley for what happened last week, and she ended up saying that she should be down and out after what happened. She ended up saying that Rhea Ripley flushed their relationship down the drain. And she ended up snapping at Sarah Schreiber for saying she caused the breakup last week, blaming it all on Rhea Ripley. So Nikki ended up saying that she is the closest thing to a hero that the people of Tulsa will ever have. She ended up saying that almost superheroes have to do things normal people don't understand. And Rhea Ripley will realize she needs an almost superhero, whether she likes it or not. So that was that, but this was awful. This was absolutely awful. The wrong woman turned heel when it should have been Rhea Ripley. And yet, Nikki is just standing there smiling when she's supposed to be a heel. Awful. And then we went back to the ring. We had the Alpha Academy, Chad Gable and Otis. They were in the ring for their graduation ceremony. And they're wearing red gowns and red caps. And there was a podium in there with some fake plants, and their titles were on the display. Chad Gable ended up bragging about his real graduation, and he ended up knocking the people of Oklahoma. So Gable ended up saying that tonight is about celebration. The celebration of not just an institution, but an individual. Gable ended up saying that he could go on talking about his long list of achievements. But this is about a man who overcame the odds. And Gable was talking about his prize pupil, his protege. And that man is Otis. Chad Gable ended up saying that he's so proud of Otis. He ended up talking about how Otis applied the final lessons from the master and decimated both Randy Orton and Matt Riddle. So Chad Gable ended up saying that tonight it is his estimated honor and great pleasure to present to us. And the fans were starting to chant RK Bro. So Chad Gable ended up going on. He ended up presenting Otis with the highest graduating honors. Pomp and circumstances. So Otis ended up stepping up to the podium. He ended up thanking Chad Gable. He ended up saying that he has a warning to issue. So Otis ended up saying that they will bring nothing but pure carnage to anyone who messes with their titles or the Alpha Academy, him and Chad Gable. So Otis ended up saying that they're never stopping and won't stop. So then Otis got interrupted by Matt Riddle. Matt Riddle came out. He was also wearing a cap and gown. He was wearing a green gown with a green cap. So Matt Riddle ended up saying that he had to come out and give a very special speech, which he wrote at the breakfast buffet this morning. So Matt Riddle ended up saying that it felt just like last week when he and Orton were champions. Just a couple of young, wild stallions running free. Yep, today is graduation day, and their lives will change forever. So Chad Gable ended up yelling at Riddle, asking why he's here, and what is he talking about. So Gable ended up knocking Matt Riddle and the people of Oklahoma. He ended up telling Riddle to be on his way. So Riddle ended up saying that he actually came out to say how proud he is of the Alpha Academy and their giant necks. So Gable ended up assuming Matt Riddle is here for a rematch, but he's not even sure Riddle can define the word. So Matt Riddle ended up struggling to define the word, so he ended up finally saying a rematch sounds like a pretty sick idea. So Chad Gable ended up saying that it's no wonder Orton left Matt Riddle high and dry. So Gable was laughing at Matt Riddle for Orton leaving him and how Orton is not here tonight. So Gable ended up saying that Matt Riddle has to prove he's worthy for a rematch in academic challenge. So Gable ended up saying that this will be a series of tests between the two teams to prove which is superior mentally. Gable ended up saying that they've already proved who is physically superior. So Otis was like, oh, I've heard enough, and that he's ready to fight. So Otis ended up taking off his robe, his gown. He ended up slowly walking up the ramp. He was trash talking to Matt Riddle. Orton was in the ring out of nowhere. He ended up dropping Chad Gable with the RKO. Otis ended up turning back to go into the ring, and Riddle ended up running down at ringside, ended up attacking him. Matt Riddle ended up going into the ring. He ended up helping Orton put on the cap and gown that Otis had on, which when Otis had the gown on, it looked like a bathrobe he was wearing instead of a gown, because it looked huge on him. So Orton ended up saying that they accept the challenge, and pretty much that was basically that. But overall, this was awful. This was absolutely awful, this segment. So it looks like we're going to once again get a rematch between the Alpha Academy and RK Bro for the titles. So there you go. We're going to be getting that again. And then we saw Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon was backstage, and Austin Theory ended up coming into his office. And Austin Theory ended up thanking Vince for this rematch that he's going to have with Finn Balor. So Vince ended up saying that he was watching their last match on a TV in his office, which that match, Balor ended up winning. So Austin Theory ended up vowing to win this match. He ended up recalling how he beat Balor up after the last match, calling it almost a half win. So Vince ended up telling Austin Theory that those half wins do not exist. So Vince ended up wanting Theory to win the match and beat Balor up. And Vince was like, if Theory doesn't beat Balor, he will beat Austin Theory up. So Vince ended up saying that he will drag Theory back to his office, break every bone in his body, then go for his head and face, and leave him with nothing but blood and teeth. I thought WWE doesn't like using blood. So Vince ended up saying that he will take a selfie with Austin Theory's beaten body, and he will send it to his mother. So pretty much that was basically that. And then we had Balor versus Austin Theory. Even though the outcome of this match was different, it was still the same shit. It was nothing different. So we had Balor and Theory going at it. Theory ended up sending Balor out first. Balor ended up reversing an attempt, and he ended up sending Austin Theory into the barricade. So Balor kept control of the match as Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial. He delivered a chop to Austin Theory's chest. They were trading counters. Balor ended up dropping Theory face first for a close 2 count. There was a point where Theory was trying to go for the ATL, but it got blocked by Balor with a roll-up, and Theory ended up kicking out at 2. So Balor ended up fighting back from the apron. He dropped Theory with an enziguri. Balor ended up going up to the top to deliver the coup de grace, and Theory ended up moving out of the way. Theory ended up delivering a dropkick to Balor's face, Theory ended up scooping Balor up for the ATL, and he ended up getting it, so he went for the cover, and there you go. Austin Theory ended up winning the match. Post-match, Theory ended up grabbing his phone, he stood over Balor, took a selfie. Theory ended up mounting Balor, started pounding on him, and Theory delivered another ATL to Balor. And Theory ended up standing up, he ended up wiping his feet to disrespect Balor, and that was that. But this was a very quick match. But it was the same shit. Even though Austin Theory ended up winning the match, and Balor won the last time. That was the only thing different about this match, that Austin Theory ended up winning. And then we had Sarah Schreiber. Sarah Schreiber ended up approaching Rhea Ripley, who was warming up backstage. Sarah Schreiber ended up asking Rhea Ripley her thoughts on Nikki's comments earlier, saying that the breakup was all her fault. Rhea Ripley ended up saying that she never intended on breaking up their friendship, and that they could have supported their solo careers. But Nikki ended up making up her mind. Rhea Ripley ended up saying that she doesn't forgive easy, but what kind of person attacks their friends? Rhea Ripley ended up saying that Nikki is more delusional than she thought if she thinks Ripley is the villain here. Rhea Ripley ended up going on and saying that she's headed out to remind everyone who she really is. So she ended up walking off, and that was that. And then Rhea Ripley ended up making her way out to the ring, and then Monday Night Raw went to commercial. So this was originally supposed to be Rhea Ripley versus Nikki ASH. So Nikki ended up coming out. She ended up facing off with Rhea Ripley. And then out came Queen Zelina Vega and Carmella. So both the women ended up knocking Tulsa. And they ended up bragging about how everything they predicted with Nikki and Rhea Ripley has come true. So they ended up saying that Rhea Ripley should really be thanking them. And of course you had Queen Zelina Vega, doing her shitty accent, which she needs to drop. I swear, that accent that Zelina Vega does is fucking terrible. Why does she have to have an accent for? Why does she have to do it? It is fucking horrendous. So Nikki ended up attacking Rhea Ripley from the side. She ended up beating Rhea Ripley down. The bell didn't ring. So Nikki ended up mounting Rhea Ripley, ended up keeping her down. Rhea Ripley got back up. She ended up sending Nikki out to the floor. Nikki ended up countering from the apron and ended up sending Rhea Ripley out to the floor. Nikki ended up sending Rhea Ripley into the ring steps. And so Nikki ended up posing on the ramp. And she's smiling. Why is she smiling? She's supposed to be a heel, and she's smiling. So the match never really got underway. Awful. This was awful. And then we saw Reggie and Dana Brooke. Reggie and Dana Brooke were backstage, and Dana kept talking to Reggie about, him down himself against Omas. So Dana Brooke ended up yelling at Reggie, saying that he is the most capable man she knows. So Dana Brooke starts giving Reggie some pointers, ended up telling Reggie to just stay away from Omas. So Dana Brooke and Reggie end up walking off, and R-Truth, Akira Tozawa, Tamina, and the referees were hiding, and they were eavesdropping on Reggie and Dana Brooke. R-Truth ended up saying that Dana Brooke must not like Reggie because she just sent him to get got. And that was that. Overall, fucking awful. And then we had Omos versus Reggie. This was a squash match. We had Dana Brooke end up running into the ring. This was before the match got underway. Dana Brooke ended up running into the ring. She ended up crawling under Omos' legs out and went out on the other side of the ring. Akira Tozawa and R-Truth end up following her, and Omos end up destroying Tozawa and R-Truth. So the bell ended up ringing. Reggie ended up leaping off the top. Omos caught him and locked in the bear hug on Reggie. Omos tightened the bear hug and turned that into a choke slam, and that was that. Omos ended up winning. Overall, squash match. And Omos is just terrible in the ring. He's a Great Khali 2.0. God, I really hope. I'm thinking about this in my head, and I'm really scared about this. I hope WWE does not make Omos win the Royal Rumble. I really do hope not. That would be fucking terrible. That would be awful. Well, I hope they don't do it, but I know I'm going to give them an idea, and they're possibly going to do it. Watch. Watch they have Omos win the Rumble. So then we had Maryse end up coming out. Maryse was by herself, and she was coming out to speak face-to-face with Beth Phoenix. So then Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, and Maryse ended up giving a shout-out to Tulsa. She ended up saying that her husband, The Miz, is not here. She ended up saying that we all know her husband has a big mouth, and now she has to clean up his mess. So Maryse ended up calling Beth to the ring so they could do this face-to-face, mother to mother. So Maryse ended up asking them to stop halfway to the ring. So Maryse ended up saying that the match at the Royal Rumble must be canceled. So Edge and Beth Phoenix were out there. So Maryse ended up going on about how no one wants the match. So Maryse ended up talking trash to the crowd. We had a "You Suck" chant, start up. Maryse ended up suggesting they perform as a unit, as best friends, and not go against each other. Maryse ended up saying that they should become friends and do playdates with their kids. So Beth Phoenix ended up saying that Maryse just needs to shut up on behalf of everyone in the arena. So Beth ended up saying she's not buying any of this, which tells her Maryse must be taking acting lessons from her husband. Beth ended up saying that the match at the Royal Rumble is not being canceled, and she's not passing up the chance to glam slam Maryse's ass through the canvas. So Beth ended up saying, why don't we give the fans a little preview? So Beth Phoenix then rushed into the ring. Maryse ended up staring her down. And then we had the Miz end up appearing at ringside. The Miz was brawling with Edge, but Edge ended up dropping the Miz. So Maryse ended up taking advantage of the distraction, and she ended up dropping Beth Phoenix with a purse. So Maryse ended up retreating out of the ring. She ended up joining her husband on the stage, and it was revealed that inside the purse was a brick. So a brick was loaded in the purse. So Edge then ended up tending to Beth Phoenix, and the Miz and Maryse were taunting them from the stage. And that was that. Overall, awful. Awful segment. We all knew that this was just a setup from the Miz and Maryse. Even I knew going into this, it was a setup. I'm like, all right, Maryse comes out, she runs her mouth about her husband having a big mouth and how she has to clean up his mess. When you know that the Miz is going to come out and attack Edge. So I've seen it coming. So then we had the Street Profits. They were backstage with Ray and Dominik, and they were getting hyped up for the match and for the Royal Rumble. So, and then we had an 8-man tag, the Street Profits and Ray and Dominik Mysterio versus Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode, Apollo Crews and Commander Azeez. This match was okay. We had the Street Profits end up coming out, and then out came Ray and Dominik. And then we had the Street Profits. They were getting hyped up with the Mysterios. And then Dolph Ziggler, Robert Roode, and Apollo Crews and Commander Azeez. They end up coming out. So Dolph Ziggler and Dominik end up starting off the match. Dolph Ziggler end up taking control. Dominik end up drop kicking Dolph's leg out. Dolph end up coming back and deliver a clothesline to Dominik. Roode end up coming in. And we had Rey and Dominik. They end up double teaming on Roode with a counter. Rey unloaded on Roode and nailed a Hurricanrana. He ended up leaping off the top at Roode. Roode ended up catching him in midair. Ended up delivering a powerbomb attempt which got blocked. And both Rey and Roode ended up tumbling over the top rope out to the floor. Dolph ended up sending Dominik out to the floor. So as Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, Rey was double teamed by Dolph and Robert Roode. Apollo Crews ended up coming in. Apollo ended up hitting a standing moonsault onto Rey. He ended up going for the cover. Rey ended up kicking out at 2. And then we had Apollo Crews end up pressing Rey high in the air above his head. Rey ended up fighting out. He ended up turning that into a tornado DDT. Dawkins ended up getting the tag, and he started unloading on Apollo. He ended up running wild. He launched Roode over his head with an exploder. He laid out Dolph with the exploder. Dawkins then went for the twisting elbow to Apollo Crews in the corner. And then he delivered the silencer also to Apollo Crews, which we had Dawkins end up going for the cover. And Commander Azeez ended up breaking up the pin. Montez Ford ended up coming in. He ended up drop kicking Commander Azeez to the floor with a shot to the head. And we had both Rey and Dominik. They ended up taking out both Dolph and Roode with the double 619. Commander Azeez ended up catching Dominik in his arms. Rey ended up leaping from the ring, ended up kicking Commander Azeez to save Dominik. So at the end of the match, Dawkins ended up delivering the spine buster to Apollo Crews. Ford ended up coming in, and he delivered the frog splash onto Apollo Crews. He ended up going for the cover. And there you go, the Street Profits and Rey and Dominik ended up winning the match. Post-match, we had Rey and Dominik end up coming from behind. They end up dumping the Street Profits over the top rope out to the floor. Rey then ended up coming from behind, tossed his own son over the top rope out to the floor. So, pretty much, that was basically that. A little preview for the Royal Rumble. Overall, this was an okay 8-man tag match. And then we had a video package on Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar. And it was a look back at what they did before both guys came into WWE and what they've done since coming to the company. It was a very good video package, very well done video package. Got to give WWE credit there for this video package because Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar, this was a dream match that nobody saw coming. That nobody even thought WWE would even do this. This was just like people predicting that The Undertaker and Sting would have a match together. And that never came to be. This Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar thing here, not all of us thought that WWE was going to do this. This was going to be another fantasy dream match that's not going to happen. But we are getting it. We are finally getting it. And Bobby Lashley, for years, wanted to have a match with Brock Lesnar. He wanted to work with Lesnar. And now he's finally getting his opportunity. But it was a good video package. Got to give WWE credit for this very well done video package on Bobby Lashley and Brock Lesnar. Then we saw Kevin Patrick backstage with Miz and Maurice. Miz ended up telling Kevin Patrick that it took just one shot to take Beth Phoenix down. Miz ended up remembering that next week is Maurice's birthday. He ended up saying before they take out the Grid couple at the Royal Rumble, next week he's going to throw the biggest birthday party extravaganza for Maurice. Oh joy, how anybody is looking forward to that next week. And he's throwing it because he loves her. So they end up celebrating. Both Miz and Maurice end up kissing. And that was that. This whole Maurice birthday party extravaganza next week is going to be a disaster. If there's a birthday cake in the ring, you already know that it's going to get thrown in Maurice's face, or Maurice is going to go face first into the cake. If Beth Phoenix and Edge come out, which I know they will, watch Beth Phoenix throw the cake into Maurice's face. Watch that happens. So that whole segment next week will be my bathroom break. And then we had Alexa Bliss. You know, the whole Alexa Bliss's journey back to Monday Night Raw. So Alexa Bliss was with her therapist in his office. And the therapist ended up welcoming Alexa Bliss back. He ended up saying that he's happy to say there are a lot less breakable things in the office this week. If you remember last week, Alexa Bliss started having a tantrum and throwing a lot of breakable things in the therapist's office. So Alexa Bliss was not sure about that. So the therapist was like, he will continue to see Alexa as a patient this week, but he can't tolerate a repeat of last week. So he ended up apologizing to Alexa Bliss for triggering her. He ended up saying that he had to see where she was at, and promises she will be in a much better place after this is all done. So the therapist wanted to do some one-word association with Alexa Bliss. So you end up saying that the first word is trust. Lily, friend. Lily, home. Lily, doll. Lily, imaginary. So Alexa Bliss ended up getting up. She ended up staring the therapist down after he ended up asking her about this word. So the therapist looks at his watch. He ended up saying, time is up. So Alexa Bliss ended up sitting back down, ended up exhaling as the therapist left. So that was pretty much that. But this segment was just as bad as last week. Alexa Bliss still having her gimmick when she was with Wyndham Rotunda, Bray Wyatt. Are we ever going to get back the goddess Alexa Bliss? Maybe we'll get it at the Royal Rumble. You know, when Alexa Bliss is in the Women's Rumble, which we all know she will be a part of the Women's Rumble. But it's time to scrap this gimmick with Alexa Bliss. It's done. It's run its course. Main event. Bobby Lashley versus Seth Rollins. This match obviously doesn't make any sense. Why are we getting Bobby Lashley versus Seth Rollins when Bobby Lashley's a heel, Seth Rollins is a heel? I said, this match did not make any sense whatsoever. And you already know how it's going to end. So, we had Rollins doing a headlock in the middle of the ring to Bobby Lashley. They end up running the ropes. Lashley ended up showing Rollins up with a shoulder. Rollins ended up dropping Bobby Lashley. Rollins ended up delivering a sling blade and a quick pedigree attempt, but Bobby Lashley ended up backdropping Seth Rollins. Lashley ended up making an early hurt lock attempt, but Rollins ended up sliding out of it, sending Bobby Lashley out to the floor. Rollins then ended up running the ropes, hit a suicide dive, and Lashley ended up slowing the impact down, which Lashley was still on his feet. So Rollins ended up coming back to the ring. He tried to do another dive, and Lashley ended up catching him, launched him out to the floor with a big throw. As Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, Rollins ended up having Bobby Lashley down the corner. Rollins was slamming Lashley's leg into the ring post. Rollins ended up slamming Bobby Lashley's leg into the post once again. Rollins ended up returning to the ring. He went to work on Bobby Lashley's legs again. Rollins ended up dragging Bobby Lashley to the middle of the ring, started still focusing on Lashley's legs. So we had Rollins end up taunting Bobby Lashley in his face. Rollins ended up just putting a hurt on Bobby Lashley's leg. He turned the hold into a single leg crab. Rollins ended up sitting up on the knee, continued to ground Lashley. So we had Lashley later on. He delivered 2 belly-to-belly suplexes to Rollins, and then he delivered a neck breaker. Rollins ended up countering a suplex, and Lashley just stayed on him, driving him face first into the mat from his shoulders. So we had at the end of the match, we had Shelton Benjamin and Cedric Alexander end up attacking Bobby Lashley. So the referee ended up calling for the bell. Bobby Lashley wins the match by disqualification. Post-match, Lashley ended up trying to fight off Shelton Benjamin and Cedric Alexander, but both Benjamin and Alexander ended up double-teaming on Lashley and sent him into the ring post. So both Benjamin and Alexander, they were talking trash in Lashley's face. They ended up sending him back to the ring post. So Lashley ended up blocking a double suplex on the floor. So we had Lashley end up launching Cedric Alexander and Shelton Benjamin with a double suplex of his own on the floor. And Lashley ended up grabbing Cedric Alexander, ended up driving him face first into the ring post. Lashley ended up stalking Shelton Benjamin and put him through the barricade with a spear. So Rollins was watching from the turnbuckles, and the New Day ended up popping over the barricade, and they rush into the ring. Rollins ended up turning around to see the Usos, and the Usos ended up delivering a double super kick to Rollins. So the Usos went back up the ramp. Rollins ended up recovering, and pretty much that was how Monday Night Raw went off the air. Overall, this match, this main event, made no sense because Bobby Lashley and Seth Rollins, they're both heels, and who are you to root for? Who are you going to root for? And obviously, we all knew what the outcome was going to be, a disqualification. Because you know it's either going to end in a disqualification or a count-out. Well, obviously, they went with a disqualification. So that was Monday Night Raw tonight. Overall, horrendous show, absolutely terrible. It was more promos than wrestling tonight. So, overall, this show is fucking awful. This show sucks. But anyways, that's it for the Monday Night Raw review. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this review. Definitely give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe. Be sure to check out my movie review of Enemy Mine if you guys haven't seen it. I said uploaded it earlier today. And I'll see you all Wednesday night for AEW Dynamite.